Hello weirdos, welcome back to my channel. My name is EmmaAbe, and we have a little guest. It's the baby. How you doing? Being cute. She's all dressed up for winter because we had to go outside to try to get her to pee. But you didn't pee, did you? No, because it's so cold outside. That's okay. You'll pee on my carpet later. So what are we doing today? Today I kind of wanted to use this video to take a look back at my reading statistics for the year of 2021 and kind of look forward to things that my reading goals for 2022. My computer is over here, so if I'm looking over there, that's why. All right, so let's look at Goodreads first. So according to Goodreads, the amount of pages I read was 50,277, and I read 134 books, which was exciting. It was not as much as I wanted it to, but it definitely hit my goal. My original reading goal was 100 books. That's what it was in 2020, and I surpassed it in 2020, and that's what it was in 2021, and I surpassed it again. But hey, I think it's really great that I made it to 134. So comparing the longest and the shortest book I read was Anti-Racist Baby. That won the Goodreads Choice Awards for the children's category last year, and that clocks in at about 24 pages. The longest book I read was War and Peace, and dear God, that book was long, and that was, according to Goodreads, that was 1,392 pages. It was long. The average book length I did was 375, which is pretty interesting. The most popular book I read was Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. The least popular book was History Makers. My average rating was a 3.8. Which is down from last year, because last year I believe it was squarely on that 4.0. I think I had a kind of large chunk of time where I was just reading just okay books, or books that I just kind of felt mad about. I wasn't reading a ton of like 5-star books, and so I think that's kind of where that comes from. The highest rated book on Goodreads is the book that I'm most happy about, and that is The Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation. I think that title is well deserved. That is the, I think, third to last book that I read, and I freaking loved it. I gave that a 5-star. This is my first review. It is for House of Earth and Blood. It would have been better if it was gay. That was honestly kind of a joke. I didn't actually mean to like physically review it. I didn't know that Goodreads would like put it on this year-end review. But essentially I was talking about how frustrated I was that I was queer baited with my roommate, and she was like, oh, you should totally do a review on it on Goodreads. And I was like, you know what, I should. And that's what I did. I kept it short and sweet and said, would have been better if it was gay, because I maintain that it totally would have been better if it was gay. These are just the books that I read. All 134 of them. So yeah, and there's my challenge. And this challenge that I completed it. I read 134 books out of 100, and I did it. All right, so let's look at like the Goodreads statistics that they give you. So looking at 2021, in comparison, 2021 falls in the higher end of the books that I've, the amount of books that I've read per year. But again, it's kind of hard to tell, because I've only really been tracking my reading as heavily as I have, while I've been on BookTube. So this is only reflecting my reading on BookTube. Will I say that stuff has gone way up since I started BookTube? Yes, it's part of why I started BookTube, was just to have accountability for me to actually read the books that I buy. So let's check out details for 2021. But I think I had about like 28 5-stars. Majority of my books that I read are 4 stars, and I had a pretty decent 3 stars, and I had a couple 2 stars. Always salty about that. So let's look at the page length. So if we compare page length, the page length is actually the number of pages that I read. I read closer to 2020. So that difference between my reading in 2021 and 2020 goes up. I think that's because in 2021 I read longer books than I did in 2020. We look at the stats for the publication year. This section of the graph, This part right here is this year, 2021. I primarily read stuff that is published in the past 50 years. But I did read the one that was the furthest, the earliest published, that was Paradise Lost this year. Let's look at books over time. So yeah, it kind of goes up and down. It spikes. I think I did really, really well at like the beginning of the year in terms of like getting the number of books in. And as the year kind of picked up and as I was doing school, it definitely tapered down because I have to complete my schoolwork. Do I have to do my schoolwork? Do I have to do my schoolwork? Ah, she would just prefer me to cuddle her all day. I think this graph that we're seeing here is going to be similar to the Pages one, which yes, it is. But one thing that I'd like to point out is that there is this big spike in December because I read a ton of I just read a lot of books that were over 500 pages. Kingdom of Flesh and Fire was over 500 pages. So was China History. So was The Wall of Storm. So that's 3 of the 8 books that cracked that 500 page mark. So that's kind of why it shoots up there in the end. So there's the Goodreads stats. Let's take a look at the stats from the story graph. So here's my 2021 year, and I set the goal on the story graph to be the same as Goodreads. So again, it was 100 books, and I met it. Yay! I don't remember when I met it, but it was definitely like, I think in August, I think. That's my guess. So I think this is interesting. The biggest mood that I read throughout the year is reflected, and the smallest one, if we can get it, is relaxing. Which one was relaxing? Okay, Little House in the Big Woods. Interesting. 51 reflective books. And those include just a lot of informative books. Don't really know what else to say about that. Let's look at the pace. I'm pretty consistent in terms of like, I read a lot of nonfiction, and nonfiction is oftentimes not categorized as fast paced. So that's kind of where we're getting the medium to slow pacing from. Page number. I read mostly like books that are of like middling length in like between 500 and 300 pages, and I read the least amount of books that are over 500 pages, which makes sense. This year, with the breakdown between nonfiction and fiction, this is very surprising to me, I found, when I was looking at this. So when you look at the percentages, it says that I read 50% nonfiction and 50% fiction. That's not entirely true. So if we look at the numbers, I read 66 books that were fiction. And if you can do math really fast, you'll figure out that I actually read one more fiction book than I did nonfiction book this year, which is wild. Can you believe that? Can you believe that I did that? That is the first time that has happened to me on Goodreads. And actually, I didn't look at this genre breakdown, but typically history is my most read genre, but actually fantasy this year like superseded that by 1 book. So I read 27 fantasy books and only 26 history books. It's just wild to me that this is happening, but I think that's good because I think I got very disconnected from fiction for a very, very long time. And kind of what I have been trying to do, like relatively recently, is like reintroducing myself to fiction and re-falling in love with that again. And I think that some of the genres that I've found that I really like within fiction is more of the like genre specific. So the fantasy, the science fiction, stuff like that, rather than the other kinds of fiction. So that's really interesting. The lowest value that it puts on here is speculative fiction, art, travel, sports, philosophy. What was the sports book? Oh, The Bleachers. Yeah, I did not like that book. And then business. What was the business book? Okay, The Art of Possibility. Okay. So interesting. So now we can look at the format breakdown, and let me kind of explain the thinking that I put into this. The story graph doesn't let you choose 2 formats. So primarily what I do is I read an audiobook and follow along. So if that happens where I'm reading the audiobook and following along, then I'm going to classify it as print. If I solely listen to the audiobook, I will put it as audio. And then if I only have the digital copy, then I'll put it as digital. So obviously digital is the lowest value at 3, which is kind of surprising. Okay, that's incorrect. I have to correct this. Let's correct this right now because I read this physically. So see how format here says digital. I actually read that in paperback. So that'll clean up those stats a little bit. Okay, let's go back. So yeah, so it's 2. So what are the 2 that I read digitally? Waiting on a Bright Moon and Strange Planet. Those are the only 2 digital ones that I read. And then I read 9 solely with audio. So a lot of these I read early on in the year before I started checking books out from the library. So that's why these are like this. So my most read authors for the year is Rick Riordan with 3 books, Alice Oseman with 3 books. Those are the Heartstopper series. Ibram X. Kendi, Stephen King, Ken Liu, Dandelion Dynasty. Love those books. And Jennifer L. Armentrout. Hopefully that 3rd book in that series, Jennifer L. Armentrout series, gets really good because I was not impressed by the 2nd one. So now let's compare number of pages. I like the way this graph is set up because you can see the comparison. I'm not going to beat this horse to death, but I kind of like that the pages read, which is the red line, and the books read, which is the blue line, kind of follow similar trajectories. And then here in August, I read like the red line is not above the blue line, which I find interesting. And then there's this little spike, but I find it interesting that the biggest gap is in October, where I only read 8 books, but all of those books were pretty long. So let's look at the star rating breakdown. So I kind of like that this gives you the ability to have this half stars. So if we look at the number, I read 24 5-star books, which are like incredible. I read 10 books that were like really, really good, but just didn't quite make it to the 5-star category. And then I read 51 books that were really, really good, super solid, just weren't like amazing or super like awesome to me. I read 10 books that were like, this is a little bit better than just okay, but it's not quite a 4-star. And then I read 34 meh books, which is not fun. It's not fun to read meh books. I've read 1 that was 2.5, so it was like pretty bad, but like didn't quite offend me. And then I read 4 books that just pissed me off. And there you go. That is all of my stats. So looking towards the new year, my reading plans, I set up reading goal. This year, I decided to up my reading goal to 120 books. That turns out to be about 10 books a month. I like that. I think that's pretty attainable. We'll see how that actually pans out because the summer and the fall in this year are kind of going to be wild because I'm going to be in a major state of transition because school is ending for me because I'm graduating. I'm so excited. I'm so ready for school to be over. In terms of like overall goals that I have, I don't really have very many goals. I have a couple of reading projects that I'm doing. So for instance, I read all of the winners for the Goodreads Choice Awards, and this year I've decided to read a second book, and that second book would just be of my choice. What's up? And then, so that's a reading project, and then the Story Graph gave me 30 book recommendations, and I'm reading through them. Some of them I'm still struggling to get my hands on, but that's going pretty good. Other kind of goals that I want to do is, again, I want to keep like reading the books that I physically. You good? There you go. That was cute. That was cute. I want to keep reading books that I own. Keep tackling the books behind me. What? What? I'm giving you attention. you want? Do you just want to sit in my lap? Yes, that was a yes. She's like, I just want to sit in your lap. So that's another major project that I'm doing. And then another thing that I've been trying to do this year is to DNF books. I'm not very good at DNFing books. But I actually am super proud to say I DNF'd my first book. I started reading it. I'm not going to tell you what it is because I'll tell you in my January wrap up. But I started reading it, and by the first chapter, I was like, I'm not going to enjoy this. I just do not like the headspace of this character that we're following. I could have put it down right then, but I was like, I don't want to preemptively judge books either. I decided to cut myself off at 100 pages. So once I reach the 100-page mark and I'm not feeling a book, I think that I want to give myself the grace to put that book down, which is something that I don't usually do because if I'm not enjoying a book, I usually just stop it. I don't know how that is going to go with the Goodreads Choice Awards stuff. That obviously isn't going to apply if I'm reading books for the BookTube prize. I have to finish those. I can't DNF those. So, so basically I want to be better at DNFing books. Another thing that I kind of want to do is like pare down my library a little bit, and just take out books that don't really interest me. And I've done a lot of that like this weekend. I didn't make a video on it because, oh my god, it was just so chaotic at my house. We had a lot of stuff happening with my family that I was just like, I'm just not going to burden myself trying to do an unhaul video in the midst of like everything that was going on. So I think those are the big things that come to mind as things that I want to do for myself this reading year. But I'm very, very excited for the upcoming reading year. She wants attention. She does not like that I'm talking to you guys or talking to my camera. I hope you guys have a wonderful new year. She's whining. Okay, we're gonna go downstairs soon, okay? And be with the rest of our humans, and you'll get all of the cuddles. I think that I'm going to wrap this video up and say do all of the subscriber things, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know if you like the baby's little outfit. You've been such a good sport. All right, say bye to the camera. Bye-bye. Bye.